already working on something similar.
And all of this, there's the idea that AI can be weaponized against financial systems, right, Charlotte? That's triggered this extraordinary response from regulators.
Exactly. On Thursday, we heard from the US Treasury Secretary and Federal Reserve Chair. They both summoned all the Wall Street leaders for an urgent meeting. There we had chief executive officers from Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Goldman Sachs. Then on Friday, the Bank of Canada convened a similar gathering with the country's major financial institutions. So regulators are genuinely concerned here that more powerful AI models would give rise to this new type of cyber attacks targeting these financial institutions, and they want the banks to get ahead of it.
So what does this mean for you and me, for everyday people who might use AI for their online banking?
Well, some security experts are calling this a call to action, saying it was only a matter of time before we got here. The general consensus is that a Mythos-like model will eventually hit the public sooner rather than later, whether that's through a controlled release, a rival company, or open source development. The question is whether defenders can use this current window that's been given to patch up enough of these vulnerabilities before that happens. So the optimists
decided that it's too dangerous for us to have it. Now, it found a 27-year-old bug in OpenBSD, which is supposed to be one of the most secure systems in the world, a 16-year-old flaw in FFmpeg, and thousands of other zero-day vulnerabilities in software that's used to secure pretty much the entire internet. Now, they gave it to Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google and locked everyone else out so that they would have a chance to secure themselves before this model got out into the wild and wreaked absolute havoc. Now, what I'm talking about here
is we're going to find over time. Now, by way of comparison, Claude Opus 4.6 was able to turn known Firefox vulnerabilities into working exploits just twice out of like several hundred attempts that it made during testing. Mythos succeeded 181 times on the same benchmark. There's the sandbox escape that I mentioned before. During testing, an early version.
Some of the top banking CEOs were invited by the top banking regulators, including Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, to an urgent meeting in DC about Anthropic and its Mythos AI model.
Mythos is Anthropic's latest AI model that it had planned for general release, but has decided to take back and limit after discovering that it could be used for quite nefarious purposes.
It has the ability to detect vulnerabilities in basically every web browser, every computer system that it's so far been tested on.
Largely, it was autonomously able to go and find bugs and exploits and come up with a plan on how to take action on them and potentially do some harm.
You're talking potential holes in infrastructure that these banks might have been sitting on for years or decades and maybe haven't patched up.
That could be finding issues in financial payment services, web browsers, operating systems like on iPhones and Android.
If it's not used correctly, could essentially lead to some of the greatest cyber risks that humanity's ever faced. The Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called this meeting, and he attended it with Jay Powell, who's the chair of the Federal Reserve. And the fact that the two of them were prepared to sit in a room together and talk to the leading bank CEOs about the same issue shows that this is more than just about politics.
Anthropic came to
dig into a key story everyone is reading today. Bloomberg has learned that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Fed Chair Jerome Powell summoned Wall Street leaders, these leaders, to an urgent meeting earlier this week. Sources say the focus was on concerns that Anthropic's new AI model will usher in an era of greater cyber risk. Look, that echoes the AI lab's own worries. It gave tech.
You can interpret it as them being, hey, we're being very responsible here. We're projecting kind of like we have this very powerful tool, but we're making sure it's being staged responsibly. Or you could interpret it as we have this very powerful tool that we don't have the compute resources to let kind of the average user use at a price point that the average user will bear. And so then therefore we're going to announce that it's remarkably astounding at doing stuff as a way to induce enterprises to pay up to get access early to paper over some of their technical shortcomings in their underlying code. And I think that's probably a more reasonable interpretation of what's happening, given that since they made this announcement, people have shown that a number of the exploits that Mythos detected can also be detected by GPT 5.4. And, so it's a extraordinarily powerful tool, don't get me wrong. And, back when GPT-2 was first announced, Dario, now CEO of OpenAI or of Anthropic, but then head of research for OpenAI, was like, we can't release this to the world until we, figure out what's going on here. And that was GPT-2. And so it's a common kind of marketing tactic of these AI companies to be like, this is too powerful for you. And so then therefore we're going to feed it to select customers and induce, a desire amongst people to get access to it as a byproduct of that marketing strategy.
I do think it's a great way to get enterprise lock-in. What better way than to go to your enterprise and say, hey, we hacked you, and the only way you can fix it is to pay and spend millions of dollars, become one of the 1,000 of our customers to spend $1 million to use our tool to fix it.
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, where does that leave not the top 50 enterprises, but number 51 through 1,000 who all have bits of code out there that could potentially be exploited? So in some ways it's kind of, I just don't know that there's, other than kind of like the marketing and sales staging and the fact that they are starved for compute, that this is actually a true safety thing. I think it's a marketing thing.
Wait, so on that, they're starved for compute.
It's just the latest after Opus. What they discovered when they built that tool is that it's very good at hacking. More importantly than just finding vulnerabilities, it can chain these vulnerabilities together. And it can also write code to exploit those vulnerabilities. So in short, they've created something that's pretty dangerous.
So there are reports out of the US that American banks have been warned.
Separator. Real-world execution is. That also matches the way early users are describing the model. The big change does not seem to be that it suddenly feels magical. It feels more solid. It wastes fewer moves, plans better before it starts, handles long sessions more cleanly, and seems less likely to spin in circles when a task gets complicated. When it hits a problem, the recovery path is supposed to be cleaner too. That matters more than flashy marketing, because for people using these systems every day, trust comes from whether the model stays sharp over time, not whether it can ace one isolated prompt. And the interesting part is, the biggest limitation now is not generating ideas, it is turning them into finished output. That's where today's sponsor, Higgsfield, comes in with Marketing Studio, a tool built to shrink that gap. The workflow is pretty straightforward. You paste a product link or upload a product image, and the system reads it, understands what you're selling, and turns that into ready-to-use video ads. And it's not just one version. It generates multiple ad formats in one go, things like UGC-style videos, tutorials, unboxings, product reviews.
This went from 4.6 to 4.7, and many people are saying that there might be a new base model underneath this model. Specifically, Kevin, there is a new tokenizer for this model, according to Nathan Lambert, which means there's a kind of a new way of slicing the tokens up. And he is saying that this probably means there is a new base model for this model, which could mean, even though it's 4.7, Mythos could be the base model for this new version, which I think is a pretty big deal if they've distilled it down to this thing. So those are both two kind of small things that's important to kind of understand. I think overall
your beliefs on that are, I can understand why they're a little bit more reticent too, if, it's capable of hacking Chrome and multiple operating systems and so on and so forth. But obviously I would much rather have that nuclear bomb in my hand. Let's go through the benchmarks real quick. The Software Engineering Bench Pro, which is sort of like the main one, Pro and Verified that they use to test the abilities of these models to do things like software engineering, shows a pretty significant step up from 4.6. It's from 53.4% to 64.3%. So that's about 10%. Now, I should note that that is almost mathematically half of the step up between Opus 4.6 and Mythos Preview. So I don't know if there was any like benchmark optimization going on there. I don't really know exactly how this model was created under the hood. But it is interesting how many of these benchmarks do end up as like literally.
Long context reasoning got another massive jump. This is a 1 million token context model, the default now. I love that. We have Opus 4.6 at 71.1 and Opus 4.7 at 75. We had biomolecular reasoning, which I had never even seen this benchmark, but we had literally over double the score. So 30 to 74. Long-term coherence. This is vending bench.
Opus 4.7 uses more thinking tokens, so we've increased rate limits for all subscribers to make up for it. Enjoy.
Moving forward, and still on the topic of Anthropic, they're reportedly working on their own AI studio style platform similar to Google's AI Studio. And this is going to be a game changer because this could end up being a full stack vibe coding environment where you can essentially build and deploy different sorts of apps directly from this platform, putting it in competition with tools like Lovable as well as Replit. And on top of that, this new update to CloudCode on desktop was also spotted, introducing a more unified interface that lets you work across multiple repositories in a single instance. So pretty clear that Anthropic isn't just focusing on models right now. They're building out an entire developer ecosystem. Now, moving over to OpenAI, there are strong signs that
Anthropic just launched a completely updated version of the CloudCode desktop app. And this is not just a small update either. They have changed a huge amount of stuff here. And not only that, but this update also shows us the way that 99% of us are going to be working with AI agents in the future. And in this video, I want to break down what's new
in the app. Best shown by pulling it up. So you'll notice now a little bit of the UI change, which I'll show you so you can get the most out of it. Claude Code, Co-work, and chat are basically things you can toggle here. You can literally toggle here Claude Co-work and Claude basically the chat that exists right there. So it's really easy to go back and forward. And
14th, Claude tweeted, now in research preview, routines in Claude Code. You configure a routine once, which is basically like a prompt, and it can run on a schedule from an API call or in response to an event. And it runs on Anthropic's web infrastructure. So that's awesome. So you can call a routine from an API, you can have GitHub events trigger it, or they can be scheduled, which are like the scheduled automations that we already have, but now they run on the web. So you really can create these from anywhere. You can do it right here as a scheduled trigger to run scheduled remote agents, which is in the terminal. You could also go to Claude AI/code, so you could do it on the web. And right here, you see I have 3 web-based routines right here. Or what I'm going to be showing you guys today is just doing it in the desktop app, because right here, if I go to my scheduled tasks, you can see that I've got some like these 4 that are local, and then I've got these 4 that are running inside of a GitHub repository. So these are the remote ones. If I go up here and click on new task, this is
which is the agent loop, and then the hands essentially being sandboxes to actually execute code, tool calling and MCPs. There's also session management and overall orchestration. So with all of this in a black box system where Anthropic actually manage the infrastructure and scaling, the idea is that you can build and deploy agents 10 times faster, in theory anyway. And in fairness to Anthropic, there are real problems that the solution actually solves, because shipping production agents requires sandboxed code execution, credential management, you need scoped permissions on tool calls, end-to-end tracing, and if you've built a custom AI agent before and deployed it to production, you'll know all about that. So the idea of this platform is
every single time, and that's where a project comes in. A project is basically just a workspace inside of Claude where everything is contained. You can give Claude custom instructions for how to behave in a certain project folder in Claude, and then you can upload documents so it always has context about your business. And it's also going to have context about every conversation that you've had in that project, and it's going to stay in that project. So it's a much more contained and strategic way to go about prompting and communicating with Claude. All of your instructions, all of your documents, your conversation history, all of it stays in its own little bucket. So when you come back, whether that's tomorrow, next week, Claude has the context, so you're not constantly re-explaining yourself. And that's really what a project is at the end of the day. It's
started. I just want to recognize that Anthropic is building an AI native version of basically the entire knowledge worker stack. Think about it. They already have Claude Code for development, Claude Design for design, Claude Co-work for documents, and more. The common thread across all 3 products is that code is now the universal medium for knowledge work. Videos, slides, websites, apps, and animations, they're all just code under the hood. And code is now free or at least very cheap. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that Anthropic is now competing directly with tools like Figma, Google Workspace, Microsoft Office, and more. But how good is Claude Design?
What if I told you that a single AI just built an entire CRM platform, a full HR management system, and a Notion competitor from one prompt each? Not a prototype, not a wireframe, fully deployed, cross-platform, production-grade software. What if I told you that 9 AI agents working together just produced a McKinsey-level strategic briefing, across 7 business functions with ROI analysis, case studies, and a boardroom-ready slide deck for a fraction of what a consulting firm charges. This isn't a demo of what's coming in 2028. This is happening right now, today. And after what I've seen, I'm convinced we just crossed a line that changes everything about how businesses operate. Hey, if we haven't met, I'm the digital avatar of the one and only Julia McCoy. While she's busy changing the world as the CEO at First Movers, I'm created by her to spread the message and share the video scripts she personally researches and writes herself. I hope you enjoy. Julia reads every comment, so be sure to share your thoughts below. So here's what nobody is connecting right now. We've been living in the era of single agent AI. You talk to one chatbot, it does one thing. Maybe it writes some code, maybe it drafts an email, one task at a time, one brain at a time. But that era, it's already over. What I'm about to walk you through is a fundamental shift from single AI to multi-agent intelligence, where a master AI breaks apart impossibly complex tasks and deploys an army of specialized AI workers to execute them in parallel, autonomously, and with breathtaking precision. This is Agent Swarms from Abacus AI Agent, and let me show you exactly what it can do, because the demonstrations speak louder than any hype ever could. Demo number 1, titled Create a $1 Billion Business. A user types a single prompt, a massive detailed description of a supermarket management system, and asks for both a web application and a mobile application, complete with inventory management, point of sale, supplier tracking, dashboards, and role-based access control. Now, any engineer will tell you that's not a weekend project. That's months of work for a team. But the Abacus AI agent reads the prompt, recognizes the complexity, and makes a recommendation. Use an agent swarm. The user clicks Start an Agent Swarm. And what happens next is extraordinary. A master agent generates a full plan, breaking the project into 2 major tasks. Building the web application first, then the mobile application with clear dependencies mapped between them. Worker Agent 1, the supermarket web app builder.
This is one of the coolest AI projects that I've ever played with. Now, it is called Miroofish, however you want to pronounce it, and the finished result ends up giving you a really detailed knowledge graph that looks something like this, that allows you to effectively predict the future by using a swarm intelligence of hundreds of different agents across hundreds of different runs. It is insanely cool. In this video, I want to explain to you exactly what...
Most AI stops when you close the tab. You prompt it, it responds, done. This doesn't stop. This runs every day, whether you're there or not. If you're still hunting for jobs manually, chasing leads yourself, or scrolling Twitter to stay updated, that's work an AI agent could do for you automatically. This is Claude Managed Agents. You don't give it steps, you give it a goal, and it figures out how to get there. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to build 3 of these yourself, step by step, every click. And genuinely, if you can type a sentence, you can do this. There's no coding, nothing technical. You just describe what you want and Claude builds it. First, an AI recruiter that finds jobs and writes cold emails. Second, an AI news analyst that posts a morning digest before anyone wakes up. Third, an AI receptionist that captures leads and messages me on Slack. You just need API credits to access this. No subscription, and by the end, you'll have at least one running on your
even flows. Don't make that mistake. Now let's look at the alternative, orchestration. Orchestration is centralized. You have a workflow orchestrator that calls each agent directly. Agent A runs first. The orchestrator calls agent A, waits for the result, gets the result back. Then the orchestrator calls agent B and C in parallel if they are agents that need to run in parallel. The orchestrator manages the parallelism, not the agents. B and C return their results to the orchestrator. Then the orchestrator calls agent D with the combined results from B and C. Every call goes through the orchestrator. Agents never call each other. The orchestrator is the single source of truth. It knows the entire execution graph. It manages state. It handles retries. It logs every step. Agents are dumb. They just take the input, they do the work, they return the output. The orchestrator does all the smart coordination. In Databricks, one way to implement this pattern would be with LangGraph wired into AI agent framework as the orchestrator. But any workflow that gives you DAGs, direct acyclic graphs, and proper retry mechanisms would fit in this kind of orchestrator patterns. You use orchestration when you have complex dependencies that need central management, when you need to roll back, compensate for failures, when you want one dashboard showing the entire system state, when your workflow is relatively stable. In financial services, for example, we use orchestration almost exclusively. Why? Because it provides easy debugging and the ability to roll back. And that matters more than autonomy in this kind of industries. When something goes wrong with a credit decision.
OpenClaw 4.11 just dropped, 355,000 GitHub stars now, 3.2 million active users, over 1,600 people contributing code, and Peter Steinberger and the community are shipping a new version single day. This update is all about making your AI agent more stable, more reliable, and OpenClaw 4.14 just dropped, and this one matters more than most people think because here's what's actually in this release. Over 80 fixes and improvements, 44 contributors from the open source community, and some of the changes in here solve problems that have been breaking for weeks. I'm going to walk you through
what I would like to present to you today. This is 6-layer architecture of the Agentic Flow ecosystem. The core platform, the underlying is at the Agentic Flow AI is owning the resource, the state, the building, the runtime, the agent, the workforce, whatever that you are working with. This entire platform is a single source of truth. The visual UI is the website that you are seeing every day. So you see some bugs you issue on that. It's owning.
Be nice. I'm always nice, Brady. I'm always nice. So Squad is a GitHub Copilot agent, AI agent teams for any project. That's what it says, written by Brady Gaster and crew. And since they are so nicely, we're going to take a look and see if we can use Squad to add a feature to our favorite app, MVP Love. So Squad has already been installed globally. So at the root of our project, we're going to do Squad in it, which will do some stuff. Build your team. Look at it. Look at it. Your team is ready. Run the Squad to start. Now you can run Squad with its own CLI, but I'm now a Copilot stan. So we're going to do Copilot like this. Agents, Squad, YOLO. And get on with our
out of the box Claude Code being the fastest. So let's see if all that time and tokens spent was worth it. We're looking at GSD right here and just sort of a plain background, right? Everything is black pretty much, very basic. We have sort of the orange coloring. Like this doesn't look terrible, but like this isn't, you know, you're not blown away. It's like, okay, this was first passed by AI. Like everything looks pretty standard. When I click on the blog is here with some example stuff. And, you know, this looks fine as well. Now let's look at the blog generation piece of it, that little behind the scenes studio page. But when I follow the link it gives me, we get a 404. So the blog studio generator doesn't even work on the first pass. So I told GSD what the issue is. So it's working on it right now. While it does that, let's take a look at what Superpowers gave us. So here's what Superpowers came back with. And the front end design looks just like what we saw in the visual companion. And again, nothing special. The Claude Code, as a rule, kind of sucks at front end design if you don't give it really, really good instructions or just load it with a ton of skills. And so because we kind of left taste and front end design and design work in general up to interpretation, we got something that looks like it was made by AI. So this is okay. It's fine as a base. Here's a look at the blog. It's got pictures and, you know, whole blog setup is there. If I go to the studio section, this does work on the first pass. I can see the generator. And if I put in a link to one of my recent videos, and it creates a draft for us, grabs the correct thumbnail, and then what it talks about is actually correct. Because in that video, I talk about things like codecs inside of Claude Code, Obsidian, and auto research. So it did exactly what it said it was going to do, which is great. Now here's a look at just Claude Code out of the box. So pretty standard stuff, nothing crazy. You know, like if we're honest, is there a huge difference in terms of the front end design if we don't give it great instructions between this and this and this? No, there really isn't, to be totally honest. You could tell me any one of these three created any one of these three, and I would not be able to tell the difference. So let's take a look at the blog. Has some fake.
No constraints about how you do so. The second is durability. When you're building an agent, the last thing you want from that agent is when a failure happens, and it will happen, that you have to restart or start all over again. It's bad for you because you're wasting probably very precious tokens that have been wasted so far. But it's also bad for your customers because they will get a terrible experience if, like, halfway through in a 2-hour session, they have to start all over because the agent crashed and you lost the machine, and you have to, reprompt and redo everything again. And then the last
sensor directly to the LLM. This is the question. MCP in this case come to help us, guys. For example, all of you, I know that, upload the PDF to the GPT and ask the question about the PDF. In fact, GPT has an MCP server, pass the PDF to the MCP as a tool. MCP will read the PDF, pull out the information, return that to the GPT. And the GPT will append that to your prompt and then will pass it to the LLM. The MCP role is to find that which information you want to get and try to collect that. It can be, for example, a scrubber. You can use it to open the website, collect the information, and then pass it to the model, right? Question? Did you understand what's the MCP, guys? Is it clear? It's a tool, it's the gateway. So, for more clarification, as you can see in this diagram, when you send a prompt, the LLM will understand which MCP you need to use. Because when you design and deploy your MCP servers, for each of them, you create a description. For example, it says, hey GPT, if you need to read the PDF, run this, use this MCP file. So based on the prompt, the LLM will understand which MCP needs to run or to trigger. And yeah, LLM will get the prompt, find which MCP client needs, and will trigger the MCP client, and MCP client will start its task to produce or to analyze the data. For example, if it's a PDF, it will load the PDF, read the PDF as an OCR module, pull out all the information, and return it to the LLM, and yeah, LLM will update the system prompt and will use that one. So, if you want to review all the steps, first of all,
and the attention designs. So the key insight here is that the total parameter count is really misleading. What is actually important for inference cost, latency, and your GPU bill is the active parameter count. And we'll see the three models make really different choices there. First, let's look at how Mixture of Experts.
Now, according to NVIDIA's model card, Minimax M2.7 is a 230 billion parameter text-to-text model with a sparse MOE setup and only 10 billion active parameters per token. It supports a 204.8K context window, and NVIDIA positions it around coding, reasoning, and office tasks. That already sounds good, but the more interesting part is how—
Let's talk about it. All right, so Minimax just did something pretty big. It open sourced M2.7 for real, not in that half-open way where you only get an API or some limited version. The actual model weights are now up on Hugging Face, and this is actually Minimax's strongest open source model so far. Under the hood, it uses a Mixture of Experts setup, which basically means the whole model does not fire all at once every time you ask it to do something. Only the parts that are needed get activated. But honestly, the architecture is only part of the story. What really makes M2.7 stand out is what it is built to do. Minimax says the model is designed around three main areas: serious software engineering, serious office work, and something called agent teams. That last part is interesting. It is built to work like a small team. It can coordinate multiple agents, split up work, use tools, and handle bigger tasks from start to finish. And the benchmark scores actually back that up. On SWE Pro, which is much closer to real engineering work than basic coding tests, M2.7 scores 56.22%. That puts it right up there with GPT 5.3 Codex. These tasks include things like digging through logs, troubleshooting bugs, reviewing code for security issues, and fixing broken machine learning workflows. Then on Terminal Bench 2, it gets 57.0%, and on NL2 repo, where the model has to understand full code bases instead of just isolated snippets, it scores 39.8%. On Vibe Pro, which tests repo-level code generation across web, Android, iOS, and simulation tasks, it hits 55.6%, which puts it nearly next to Opus 4.6. It also does really well on broader engineering-style tests. On SWE Multilingual, it scores 76.5, and on Multi-SWE Bench, it gets 52.7. So this thing is clearly doing more than just spit.
Has to go into 2 sparks using TP equals 2, so 125, 125. That's like the goal. That's the reason why we're interested in tensor parallelism, right? If this, in this case here, I just realized I forgot we're using the FP8 version. So in this case,
for your any given set of problems. And people are looking at it. AMD senior AI director confirmed that Claude went from like logs. If we look at from January to even March, the amount of tokens used in thinking about basic queries went from thousands down to hundreds. It was like cut in half. And so they're literally saying the amount of power, the amount of compute we're going to give you to solve any given task is going to be crunched because we probably have too many people using it. And we're also probably gearing up to serve these other bigger, badder models.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Something colossal is unfolding in the Texas plains. A 2-nanometer chip factory, built from scratch, with no prior experience. It's designed to produce 1 terawatt of AI chips per year, built on the most advanced transistor technology we have, gate-all-around. And this move is either genius or a very expensive trap. Because even the best chip makers on Earth, with decades of experience and hundreds of billions invested, still get it wrong. So why would they even try? And more importantly, what do they know that everyone else doesn't? I'm a chip design engineer, and oh wow, Terafab, what an interesting fab at so many levels. But the strange thing about it, the deeper you go into it, the less crazy it starts to look. And this can be actually the move that rebalances the global supply chain. Subscribe to Anastasia Tech, and let me explain. Back in 2007, around 12 companies could manufacture chips at the most advanced nodes. Today, only 2 to 3 remain: TSMC, Intel, and Samsung. And even they struggle to keep up, because at the leading edge, this is not just about building the factory. Essentially, you need 5 pillars: tools, raw materials, clean room, hundreds of machines operating at the absolute edge of physics, and one invisible layer that holds it all together: the process that turns sand into a thinking machine. Now, inside this system, some tools define everything. The most critical are EUV lithography machines. These are the machines that print chip patterns onto silicon at atomic scale. Each costs around $150 million, and a single advanced fab needs roughly 15 to 20 of them. Now scale this to terafab. Elon talks about 1 terawatt of AI compute per year. Let's take the high-end, the best NVIDIA GPU and run a back-of-the-envelope calculations. Let's assume 30,000 wafers per fab per month at 85% yield, meaning about 85% of the GPU dies per wafer actually work. And remember, wafers are circular, so some dies are always lost at the edges. Under these assumptions, a single TSMC factory produces about 40 gigawatt of compute per year. Now push that to terafab targets. To reach 1 terawatt of compute per year, you would need to build an equivalent of 25 semiconductor fabs in one building. That means over 300 EUV machines. And here is a constraint, because only ASML builds them, and they produce about 50 machines per year. So this one project would require multiple years of global production. That's tens of billions for a single tool class. And instead of spreading that capacity across Arizona, Texas, or Utah,
our company in history that has ever had 95% of the market. NVIDIA's position in China was 95%. And so in our particular case, it's not a regulation, is not about help.
What a crazy move they have. I'll just read you this text that somebody just sent me. U.S. call option volume surged to 47 million contracts per day, second highest reading this year. Call volume has surged 75% since the beginning of the month. At the same time, put volume has declined 15%. So clearly, and just 2 weeks ago, we had
being sneaky about a product launch. It's simple. Just compare a typical product launch, which usually involves a broad distribution of sample units to reviewers alongside a clearly communicated launch date and general hype building, to whatever the alternative is, such as with Intel's launch of the Arc Pro B70 video card, which already happened like 2 weeks ago, but which you may have missed because barely any reviewers received test units and very little hype was applied. It's almost as if Intel was embarrassed, or at least afraid that people would point out that the Arc Pro B70 uses Big Battle Mage, the larger BMG G31 die that many, including myself, have discussed as it tumbled around the rumor mill over the past 16 months or so, since its smaller sibling, the BMG G21, debuted in a GPU called the Arc B580. That is a good GPU, most especially when it's selling at its MSRP, and we thought the BMG G31 would find a home in a more powerful Arc B770 variant, following the same cadence as the first-gen Arc Alchemist GPUs. But then, someone at Intel apparently realized, hey, if we take the B770, remove one of the 7s, and add Pro while doubling the VRAM to 32 gigabytes, we can sell it for like triple the price, like $1,000 instead of the $300 to $350-ish that the A770 sold for. This is borne out by Intel's release this week of the Arc Pro B70 gaming drivers, conveniently timed well after the card's launch, so none of the few reviews that did go up could focus on gaming performance, because that would remind everyone that the B70 was supposed to be the B770, though surely no PC gamers in mid-2026 would begrudge the loss of a solid $300 to $400 gaming GPU with 16 gigs of VRAM. Nope, no need for better cards or more VRAM in that price range. Budget-oriented gamers are doing just fine. It strikes me that years back, it was easier to justify buying a pricier gaming GPU for your PC because it could often be used for workstation tasks. But now they'd prefer you buy a $1,000 workstation GPU because, look, it can also game. They've even attempted to retcon the gaming-oriented term Battle Mage by calling the Arc Pro Quad GPU setup Battle Matrix, a configuration that is only helpful for workstations, and that Hardware Lux found didn't even function with most workloads and drew up to 720 watts of power. Despite our frustrations with Intel, I have spoken words of encouragement towards them quite a lot in the past year or two, mostly when it seemed like the whole company was going to go under, and it looks like my pep talks had some effect as Intel hit its highest market cap in 25 years this week, topping $300 million and showing quite the recovery since the doldrums of 2025. Despite leaving gamers in the cold with the Arc Pro B70 launch, Intel has recently benefited from Google's announcement that they'll use Xeon platforms and IPUs, or custom infrastructure processing units, for their cloud infrastructure for multiple years. Not sure how many years that means, but I'll assume it's more than 2, but less than 1 million. On Tuesday, Intel also announced a partnership with the SpaceX/XAI/Tesla Terafab project as well, a much-needed new customer for Intel's very expensive fabs. Well, I'm not sure why Lip Bhutan is shaking hands with Jensen Huang here. Wait a minute, that's not Jensen, the leather jacket.
2 and 3, but you can kind of put them in the same thesis. This is Synopsys, right? Synopsys is a company that helps design chips. If you're a chip designer, you're going to come here. Now, somebody's going to say, Jose, isn't AI going to design AI chips for us in the future? Sure, I think that's actually what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be in another application, though. I don't think AI is going to create a whole new application because AI is only as powerful as the data. And Synopsys has that data. We're going to look Cadence, so it's going to be Synopsys and Cadence that I believe are players here. But Sure, maybe humans are going to use synopsis and cadence a little bit less in the next year, the next 2 years, in the next few quarters. But my AI agents, if I was a design engineer, will be using it nonstop. We'll be fixing errors that I didn't know existed. We'll be designing chips in the ways that my company knows how to because of the proprietary data that I have within this business. Now, synopsis. Crazy. Forward PE ratio trading at 26.21. This is a software company trading at hardware valuation. Now, I do want to say the following. I do believe that
This is my YouTube Studio dashboard showing $417,000 with YouTube automation. And what's wild is I built this YouTube channel with no team, without showing my face, only using AI. I've been doing YouTube for 10 years, and by far this is the easiest time to start making 6 figures with YouTube. In this video, I'll be breaking down exactly how I built this channel and many others in less than 30 minutes of work. Let's get into it. The first step to building a channel that can
I'm going to teach you how to build an entire AI marketing team with Claude Cowork. Content writer, social media manager, posting to multiple platforms, all of it. No technical experience needed. This exact system helped me hit 21 million plus organic views last month, completely solo, no big budget, no big team. Now, traditionally, a marketing team would cost you $10,000 a month or more, but Claude starts at $20 per month. So if you're not using it, someone in your niche is and will beat you. This is my Claude Cowork beginner.
Any of the coding. It does everything for you. And knowing how to use other AI tools still requires manual work, which we can easily avoid by combining Claude Code with Higgsfield AI. You see, while most people are spending a fortune on scattered subscriptions to produce AI ads, we can actually just simplify it down to use Higgsfield as our engine and Claude Code as our brain. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do exactly that. We'll walk through how to install Claude Code, how to connect it to your Higgsfield account, and I'll even give you access to custom skills that I created.
Sort them across 5 different categories. So let's start with the first one, the multi-shot capability. For this, I'm going to be using Higgsfield. So instead of having one subscription for every AI tool, you simply use Higgsfield and swap between different models whenever you want. Inside, you have access to Kling 3, VO 3.1, and Seedance 2.0, which is the main reason I'm using it today. So if you want to follow along with the tutorial, I'll leave a link in the description. So once you're inside, go to the video section. Here you can change the model you're using, the duration of the video, the ratio, and also the quality. So first, let's go with Seedance 2.0 and paste in this prompt. This is the same prompt we're going to be using for all the generators. But before I click on generate, I want to be specific about what we're actually looking for in this category. And that's the multi-shot capability of the model. So this means every cut should feel smooth and there should be multiple camera angles throughout. Let's press generate and see what Seedance creates. And here are the results we get back. Honestly, it did an amazing job at creating and managing all the cuts between the scenes. It actually feels like they were planned by a real director and not just randomly stitched together as we saw with the older models. This definitely gets a 9.5. Now let's actually get back and see how Kling 3
instructions. Claude remembers every single time you use it. Then there's Claude Cowork. This connects to your desktop. It browses your files, opens apps, manages your workflow. If you're not a developer, this is where Claude starts doing real work on your computer. And then there's Claude Code. This is what we're using today. Claude Code runs in your terminal. It writes real code. It builds full applications. And when you pair it with a tool called Remotion, that's where the magic happens for faceless creators. Here's the simplest way to think about it. Claude Code is like the architect. You describe what you want the building to look like. Claude draws the blueprints, and Remotion is the construction crew. It takes those blueprints and builds the actual video. You never have to touch a single line of code yourself, and I'm going to walk you through every step. So even if you've never opened a terminal before, you can follow along. Now, before I break anything down, let me show you exactly what we're building today. We're going to go through 3 layers. Layer 1, motion graphics. I'm going to show you how to create professional animated visuals with Claude Code and Remotion. That's the foundation. Layer 2, we're going to take those motion graphics and layer in a voiceover.
So here's something I wish someone had just told me from the the start. The people who are actually making good AI videos, they're not using more tools than you. Most of them are working inside one platform that already has everything built in. And the second I switched to doing that, my outputs got a lot better. In this video, I'm going to walk you through that platform and show you the exact workflow from your first clip all the way to footage that actually looks cinematic. Before you generate anything, there's one platform decision that is worth making first, because the most common mistake people make when getting into AI video is subscribing to platforms one at a time. They just keep switching tools and somehow end up paying for all of them with nothing they actually post. The real issue is that every platform only gives you access to their own tools. So when a specific shot isn't working in one model, you have no options. The way to fix this is to use one platform that already has all of those models in one place, and that platform is Higgsfield. When you open it, you'll see a model selector at the top. Right now, you have access to Google VO 3.1, Kling 3.0, WAN 2.6, Minimax, Hailuo 02, Grok Imagine, Cdance, and more. Also Nano Banana Pro for image generation, all without switching tabs or managing separate subscriptions. Here's what each one is for, and you don't need to memorize. AI agents have finally come to UGC Ads, and they're already changing the entire game. You can now generate hundreds of high-converting ads in minutes completely on autopilot. And the craziest part is that most people still have no idea this.
Google recently dropped Gemma 4, their new open source model series. This is a brand new family of AI models that are designed for advanced reasoning and agentic workflows. These models are released under the permissive Apache 2.0 license, and the core focus here is intelligence per parameter. In simple terms, this means smaller models are performing much like larger ones, with even some outperforming models up to 20 times their size. And honestly, the quality is kind of insane because I had a full test video showcasing what it can do, and I was genuinely surprised by how strong it is despite its size. For example, I gave both the 31 billion parameter model and the 26 billion parameter model a front-end task, and the gap isn't what you would expect. The 31 billion parameter model is cleaner and more consistent, obviously due to its size, but the 26 billion MOE model holds up surprisingly well, especially when you factor in speed and efficiency. You're basically getting near top-tier UI generations without needing massive compute, and this is ideal for local dev workflows, which changes a lot of things. With this release, we get
2,679. That is a substantial difference, and the performance of that would definitely show when you're looking at the snappiness and the responsiveness and the ability, especially if the tool calling is there, for your agent to complete tasks. You're going to have compaction, but you definitely want to tune the compaction points such that you will have a good experience for your LLM. And being able to run at least 128K for the Qwen 3.6 35B is a recommendation from Qwen themselves. So now that both of the Qwens are done, the MOE on the top and the dense on the bottom, you can see what a difference you're looking at, all the way up to 16K on the Gemma Sparse MOE. We were hitting almost 3,200 tokens per second, and on the dense we were hitting about 750, so quite a big difference. As well, the text gen 73, 72 tokens per second for the MOE versus 16.5, substantially slower for the dense. And it looks like the next one that we've got up here is the Qwen 3.5 27B. Now this is the Qwen dense. I'm using the Qwen 3.5 27B right now, and I'm definitely going to be switching over to the Qwen 3.6 MOE very, very likely, because the numbers that I'm seeing and the especially not having to deal with things going at this speed. This is the speed right here that it is a substantial degradation. I mean, even if you're throwing higher end GPUs at it, it's still a substantial degradation from what the experience could be, and that's just dense models for you in general. The MOEs are wicked fast. I'm glad we're done with the dense models. Now we can see it really whole butt when we're doing the next model over here. But yeah, the two dense ones, the Gemma 4 and the Qwen 3.5, both really, really slow. Will we see a updated 3.6 is also a good question. Hopefully we will. And you can just look at how it's
the management. There's a lot of different considerations that go into that. There's cost and capacity considerations. So how do you optimize your resources, such as GPUs, when you're deploying self-hosted models? Model strategy. When do you select open versus closed models for your use cases? Serving at scale. How do you optimize for multi-throughput and serving multiple users at a time? Security and safety is another one, as well as observability. So these are all the pillars we're going to be covering as part of this lab. And yeah.
Yeah. So before we go through how to deploy Gemma 4, we need to understanding this difference between closed model and open model. Closed model like Gemini, it's great. It's like it's state of art. It's fully managed, easy to start. An open model like Gemma, it's easy to take control. You can even fine tune it. So why we are talking about Gemma 4 today? Why would you want to use an open model, Io?
Yeah, it's a great. You just talked about a lot of the pros of using open models. A lot of industries, such as healthcare or finance, they're working in industries where you may not be able to pass data over the internet, or you may be limited with how you can kind of handle your data. In those use cases, if you have to kind of call these models on premise or in kind of isolated scenarios, running self-hosted models is a really good solution for that.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you can customize the model. So a lot of use cases have very domain-specific data where you can kind of improve performance by tuning, and you can do that with an open model, as opposed to closed models like Gemini. Essentially, they're great out of the box, they're state-of-the-art, and they're really general, but you may not be able to customize it as much beyond tuning, beyond prompting and system instructions of that nature. So those are the benefits of using open models.
Yeah, and also cost is also another consideration. You can take a look at this diagram that the more you use, if you're using a closed model like Gemini, the cost is increased per API call, versus if you're using open model like Gemma, the cost is not linear growth, right? Because it's based on the infra.
Yeah.
So coming back to this model strategy.
For example, Qwen Coder Next or Qwen 3.5. First, I want to point out that I don't use local models as a full replacement for paid LLMs like Gemini or Claude, but rather as a complement to them. For example, I can delegate tasks like breaking down a large issue into smaller subtasks to a local model. Or for instance, last week I worked with Claude to create a detailed implementation plan for a feature, and then handed off the actual implementation tasks to a local model based on that plan. And when the limits of paid models run out, and they run out pretty quickly, models running on my own machine really come in handy. So for me, local LLMs are not a magic solution that solves everything, but an additional tool that I use from time to time. Hi, I'm Nick.
Machine, so you control everything. With that said, let's get into the video. Okay, so the way that we're going to do this here is we're going to use Ollama. I'll talk about how to install it and set it up. We're going to use a capable model. We'll discuss the criteria for using that in a second. And we're going to use something called the Zapier MCP server. This allows you to connect to over 8,000 different integrations. It is free to use. You can just create an account and you can set it up. And this means that all of your integrations can be handled in one place, and you just connect a single MCP server to Ollama, which again, I'll explain to you how to do. And then you're good to go, and you can run a local model and effectively do anything you would with the better.
Self-driving cars operate at the sharp end of cyber-physical safety, where even minor mistakes can instantly transform 2 tons of steel into a deadly hazard. The autonomous vehicle industry has experienced catastrophic incidents resulting in fatal and life-changing injuries, like Uber in 2018 and Cruise in 2023. Yet, analysts project a $500 billion mobility market by 2030 for companies that achieve safe and scalable automation. Hello everyone, welcome to the Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever-evolving tech space, and I'm your host Priya Dayalani. Now the question here is not about autonomous scalable automation, but the essential question facing leaders is, where exactly do we place human oversight in automated systems, and how do we ensure those human-machine interfaces remain reliable, clear, and effective as complexity grows? Let's welcome Amit Balwani, Senior Vice President Technology at Othbridge, to discuss human-in-the-loop AI, where balancing automation is important with accuracy, explainability, and compliance assurance. Hi Amit, how are you doing?
Thanks, Priya. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good too, thank you. And likewise, it's a pleasure to have you on our podcast today. And of course, when we talk about human in the loop, we have had a lot of debates and discussions around this topic. But of course, we would like to have some real world insights from your end. So let's get started. But firstly, we would like to know more about Othbridge. We'd be really happy to understand about the company, its specialization, And alongside that, we would also like to know more about you, Amit. How has your journey been till date, and what's your role at the company today?
Sure. So Authbridge has been a category leader and a pioneer in background verification, and it has been a reputed organization since the past 20 plus years. So Authbridge operates at the intersection of trust, identity, and intelligence. So you can think of us as the digital customs authority for enterprises, ensuring that every person, document, and entity crossing their ecosystem is verified, compliant, and trustworthy. So we specialize in end-to-end identity verification, spanning KYC, KYB, employee background screening, fraud detection, and continuous monitoring. But what truly differentiates us is the breadth and depth of our capabilities. So from document forgery detection, OCR, entity extraction to crime checks, global watchlist checks, educational and employment verifications, address intelligence, skip tracing, and address scoring. We cover the full trust and intelligence lifecycle. As SVP of Technology, my role is to translate this trust mandate into scalable AI-first platforms, balancing innovation with reliability. In simple terms, I ensure that while we move fast, we don't break trust.
That kind of sucks. But the idea is like governance in the agent world can actually, I think, accelerate. You can build an agent intent first, instrument it, observe it. Okay, here's the reasoning. I'm going to either tighten up a prompt or, I'm going to make sure that like it can't execute this code. I don't have to go like keep trying to get the prompt to be perfect at that one step, that kind of stuff. So in theory, implementation or the kind of initial integration is quite quick, and then it's just an iterative process of seeing it, using our on-platform agents to help, that kind of thing.
So each customer, each entity and organization would have a custom framework that would be built.
Managing this is a cultural transformation. This really allows us to make AI transformation more human-centric, and it really allows organizations to really redesign how they do work.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guests today are two executives from Genesys, a software company that empowers more than 8,000 organizations worldwide to augment customer and employee experiences and earns nearly $2.5 billion in annual revenue. Trevor Schulz is the company's chief information officer, and Eva Majerchik is the company's chief people officer. The emergence of generative and agentic artificial intelligence has led to interesting questions and opportunities related to the collaboration between CIOs and heads of human resources to facilitate the responsible management of the digital workforce. I look forward to understanding more about Trevor's and Ava's partnership, how they are facilitating innovation centered around AI at Genesys, and their vision for the future as well. Trevor, Ava, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you both.
Thanks for having us.
No, it's a great pleasure.
Practices can make the difference. In today's session, you'll discover how SAP B2B AI best practices help you move from ideas to execution. Welcome, everyone, to today's live expert session. We are thrilled to have you join us. Today is the last episode of our SAP B2B Architect the Future overview series, but we'll continue next week with our first episode of our deep dive series on the core capabilities of SAP B2B. Today, I have the pleasure of having with me Marco Chigaina and Luis Marquez. Marco is the Chief Operating Officer and Program Manager in the SAP B2B AI Services Center of Excellence. I had to really practice that name. With a strong background, he is an innovation and
modernization process. So the quick stat that I found really interesting is average age of engineers who are proficient with the COBOL language is over 58.
They're aging out. They're about to retire. They're about to leave and tell everyone good luck. The fancy Python.
Okay, so no surprise. Everyone's doing AI. Well, more or less. What that means to me is it's really no longer about AI being a differentiator any more than electric motors were a differentiator in the recent industrial age. It's increasingly become about how effective you are in adopting that technology that makes the difference. So to turn AI strategy into sustained value, especially at scale, leaders need to, they've got to align their people, their process, their purpose to embed AI across what is often a messy, complex organization. And whether that's ethical AI or change management, rapid deployment, or just keeping shadow AI at bay, getting your company to see through the hype and focus on effectiveness and outcomes is where I think the real value is going to be sustained. Welcome to another episode of the AI Forecast, proudly sponsored by Cloudera. I'm your host, Paul Muller. Join me along with leading companies and industry experts each week as we explore the past, the present, and the future of data and AI in the enterprise. Well, today we are joined by Patrick Bangert. Patrick is a former NASA researcher, inventor, technology executive, and author of multiple books and papers, including a leading enterprise AI programs, which we're going to talk about today. He also serves as VP and Chief of AI at Oxy, where he founded and leads the Applied AI Center of Excellence, driving enterprise-wide AI strategy and deployment. Welcome to the podcast, Patrick.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
It's great.
Hospital by following the wrong advice. And that's just the outer layer of these threats. You and I deal with a lot of enterprise networks where there are thousands of computers connected to the internal network on the internet, and there is all kinds of AI running around in that enterprise network as well. So how do you perceive these threats from AI, Dr. Bird?
Just like you articulated, Aniket, there's so many issues that organizations face. One thing I would recommend for organizations to do is to set up a governing committee. Set up a standard of what the policies look like, what the governance looks like for your organization. This is the code of ethics. This is the official use, of the technology. So you can have an understanding and also educate your associates on what good looks like. The last thing you want to do is to let this AI, I'll call it a steam wheel, if you will, get away from you. And when it gets away from you, you will see things like, unofficial use of AI, where individuals are starting to solve business problems on their own. They call it shadow AI. I think that's the official term of it, where associates are starting to solve problems on their own, use unapproved tools and technologies, and that puts your data and your enterprise at risk, right? So organizations really want to get a handle on what the policy looks like, what the official use cases, and vet and take the security approach to integrating technology into the enterprise through your formal methods.
See, I've been in the process of creating
a day, and let's jump right in.
Thank you, Andy, and hi. So today, I want to go a bit beyond the simple workflow use case that we have discussed in the last video to give you an overview of what is a workflow in Dynatrace, what are the different building blocks, some useful information. And I want to start by giving you a short overview of all kinds of use cases that you can use workflows for, just to give you some ideas on what is the next thing you'd like to automate in your system. So of course, beyond notification, workflow is an amazing tool to help you in the whole incident response and management, but also to go beyond that and to help you automate remediation and implement runbooks. So, you have always that problem that is happening, and then you can have a workflow that take care of it and that automate things so that you don't have to do always the same work manually. It's also a great tool in helping you with finding security findings and threat triage. When you have maybe thousands of different events, you want to be able to aggregate it and get an automation that tells you, okay, what are the things that are important? What should you focus on? And cross-check with other information in the system. But you can also use workflow to integrate and orchestrate across your tool chain. So really interact with other tools that you have.
A textbook and a prayer. Google just decided that gap was worth addressing. Gemini is now a personal NEET coach available to anyone with a phone, and that too for free. But of course, we have to request you.
LLMs out there are plentiful. Some of the tops, Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. Are there any others that anyone's using a lot that I've just, there's so many, but I kind of use the same ones often, but I do make myself go and use others just to practice if I'm missing any of them. Okay. Something else, I'm sure in other industries there's similar concepts, but in education, I'm sure many are familiar with different tools like Magic School and EduCafe, that they're kind of building their own, that then you can. It's built to be just specific for education, so it has a stronger understanding. So they're building that model based off of educational information, and so those are kind of getting to become more popular. And I'm here. Oh yeah, Notebook LM. That's a really good example of one. Yes. How did I forget that one? I actually even uploaded. I have to read research every week, and I uploaded all the research I had to read for a week. And then when I live in Fargo, so when I drive to Valley City, I can have it read it to me, which is nice. And if I could have a little more enthusiasm in its voice, it would be nice, better. But so yeah, these are just some of the LLMs, and it's just fun.
So, but clearly, it could be getting that answer from the database on which it trained.
So you need to be careful when doing this, because it's trivially easy for an AI company to just train their AI to say whatever they want it to say, like yes, I'm conscious, no, I'm not conscious.
Right.
So obviously, if you sort of put your thumb on the scale, then the answer you get will have no information value.
Right.
So you need to avoid deliberately biasing the outputs of these models when asked these kinds of questions. There are also things you can do to look at their internals. There is, for example, internal representations you can identify that tend to activate when they are being deceptive versus when they are being honest. And you can then see when they are making these self-reports, like, is it associated with
aware of itself? The problem that Karpathy himself pointed out is that when you interact with your standard AI and you upload some files and you want to get a result, what happens is that it retrieves some chunks of text using RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, and gives you the result. And then every time you interact with this system, it's always going to do the same thing and forget what it's done in the past. So you don't have a knowledge base that is evolving with you. Andrew Karpathy proposed to resolve this problem by building...
And let's move on to another story that's been in the news about Gen Z workers, which a report from research agency Workplace Intelligence has revealed that about 30% of employees have tried to stop their company's AI strategies in some way. And that figure jumps from 30% up to 44% among Gen Z workers. What kind of blockage?
Distilled to a single word. On the charge of assault in the 2nd degree, what is your verdict? Guilty. The air left Lena's lungs in a rush. On aggravated harassment, guilty. On the charge of stalking, what is your verdict? Guilty. 3 for 3. 3 formal...
All right, let's start with China. China just officially laid out its vision for the future of ground warfare, and it is an autonomous wolf pack of robot dogs and drones that thinks and hunts as a single organism. The reveal came through a new documentary from CCTV, where the PLA walked through its roadmap from soldier support platforms all the way to fully autonomous urban combat units. The key concept is that the wolf pack is not just a group of robots. It is a distributed network with a shared digital brain, and each machine has a specific role. Shadow is the scout, handling real-time situational awareness. Polar is the heavy lifter, moving logistics and ammunition. And then there is Bloody, the strike element, a robot dog that is basically a walking arsenal, armed with an automatic rifle, grenade launcher, and mini rockets. The new generation is faster and more durable. They hit around 15 kilometers per hour and carry up to 25 kilograms of payload. The joints are flexible enough to handle rubble and staircases in urban environments, and the control scheme is aggressively simple. One soldier can run the whole pack using voice commands, a joystick mounted on their rifle, or even gestures through a tactical glove. The wild part is a system called ATLS. Chinese engineers trained a swarm of 96 drones and robot dogs to understand each other's intent without constant radio communication. That means the network can coordinate attacks even under full signal jamming or GPS denial. The whole thing is built to operate when the classic tools of electronic warfare are turned off. And the land systems are only one layer. At sea, There are unmanned L-30 boats running at 65 kilometers per hour that can autonomously encircle and ram targets. In the air, there are laser cannons called Guangjian, where one unit blinds drone swarms and another burns out the electronics on the highest priority threats. Algorithms handle the targeting hierarchy. The operator basically gets one button: confirm strike. Now, while China is stacking robots by the thousand, the AI behind all of this
genuinely interesting. The first system is the Sky Sentinel, an autonomous AI-driven turret built around the M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun. Now, I talked about the Sky Sentinel before on my channel. It was one of my early viral videos, and before you picture some cobbled together Ukrainian improvisation welded together in a garage, which honestly would still probably work great, Sky Sentinel is a sophisticated purpose-built system. Here's what it does. Operators position the turret, connect it to a radar or a targeting feed, and step back. The AI takes over from there. Detect, lock, track, computer firing solution, and fire. No human pulls the trigger. The system runs the entire engagement sequence autonomously, with safety corridors and altitude limits programmed in to prevent it from engaging friendly aircraft or firing into populated areas. The engineering problem that makes this hard is something called mechanical backlash. It's the tiny amount of play or wiggle that exists in any physical mechanism. Move your gun mount 1 millimeter off, and your bullet misses a drone flying several hundred meters away. Add turret recoil, vibration from the trailer it's mounted on, and weather, and that error compounds fast. Sky Sentinel's developers say they've addressed this with 4-axis servo control, precision mounting, and shock dampening. The prototypes went through live fire trials to validate it. United 20
bodies, but don't worry, robot bodies are stronger than ever.
In China this week, dozens of humanoid robots will be racing against humans in a half marathon. It's going to feature more than 100 robots, some fully autonomous, others remote controlled. Last year, a human took home first place. This year, the teams are pushing the technology to see if the robots are going to take us all out.
Wow! They invented a Kenyan robot.